start the recording. Okay. So the first question I have is about training. So what the time of cardio and what intensity someone should do in order not to lose muscle?
There's a lot of debate over this one. I used to be a big proponent of HIIT cardio, doing high intensity intervals, because there is some evidence, in the literature that it may interfere with size and strength gains less. But HIIT cardio is really hard to recover from, and so there's a limit to how much someone can do, and before they start to get beat up and not really recover from their workout. So I've almost in recent years went the other direction. I tend to focus more on lower intensity forms of cardio or moderate intensity forms of cardio rather than high intensity cardio.
Yeah. Do you see
the screen's doing something weird here.
What? I think sharing or something.
Yeah, something weird. Like I can't see you anymore.
Okay. So just a second. Now it's okay?
Yeah, I can see me. I can't see you. There we go.
Now it's okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's all right. Do you want me to start over, or do you want to?
No. It's okay. It's okay. Continue.
So so like I said, I used to do a lot of high intensity interval training, and I've almost flipped the other direction to where I'm doing primarily lower intensity cardio at this point, or maybe some moderate. I generally keep cardio lower intensity just because it's tend to be easier for people to recover from. You can go walk, go on an extra walk today that's 20 minutes or something like that, and you can go squat hard tomorrow and it'll be okay. But if you do like a 30-minute hard HIIT cardio session with a bunch of really hard like hill sprints or something like that, that might affect your squat tomorrow, and it's harder on the joints and things like that as well. And so, I mean, in general though, I think the biggest thing is just keeping cardio usually as low as you can while still seeing progress. So that might be 0. For some people, that might be 0 all the way through prep. For some people, that might be a decent amount all the way through prep. Other people might start with none at the beginning and have to get up to a decent amount by the end. But I would base it on what's needed for you and your ability to see your target rate of loss throughout prep.
Great. So I want to ask a question beside the other questions that I prepared. Let's say someone natural and someone who is on PEDs, okay?
Yeah.
And so we want to, let's say, contest prep the two.
Okay.
So the rate of loss for someone with steroids will be the same, or you can exaggerate his.
You can go a little bit quicker with someone who's on drugs, but I feel like a lot of people who are enhanced still diet too fast. You see a lot of people trying to drop, 30 pounds in like 8 weeks or something like that, where it's just excessively fast. I still think they would be better off slowing it down. But yeah, someone who's enhanced can probably get away with a little quicker loss than someone who's natural, and still hold on to muscle. Someone who's natural is going to probably have to diet a little bit slower, especially later in prep, because that's where you're more susceptible to muscle loss and things like that. Earlier on in prep, or doing like a cut in the off season where you're 30 pounds over stage weight, you can diet a little bit quicker. But as you're getting really, really lean as a natural, yeah, I would probably you probably should diet slower than someone who's enhanced. But like I said, someone who's enhanced still could benefit a lot of times from dieting slower than they usually do.
Okay. And let's say the two just keep the same ROL, and someone who is using steroids will build more muscle on this time.
Yeah, I mean they would hold on to more muscle probably, because if you look at what happens to someone who's natural, I mean, by the time you get stage lean, hormone levels are low. testosterone's low, and someone who's enhanced, not only is it still like in the physiological range, usually it's above, you're super physiological. And so, yeah, you're going to hold on to build more muscle at the same rate of loss during a prep as someone who is natural.
Yeah, great. So the next question will be, what do you think about tracking steps, and how many steps is the maximum number in order not to start losing muscle or affecting performance?
Yeah, so I do have a lot of clients track steps during prep. It's something I've started doing a lot more in recent years because, when you get really, really lean, you really don't want to move. Like you get really sedentary. You do the minimal possible and you don't move a whole lot more than that. And so I started having clients track steps because I was finding situations where people are just moving less and less and less outside the gym and then just doing what they had to in the gym and like the bare minimum to live life. And that was slowing loss. I don't know if tracking steps is for everybody. For some people, it might be an extra stressor because it's another thing for them to track. And I usually don't have clients track steps in the off season either, unless they are super sedentary. Then we might have to just for overall health. But usually in the off season, I don't have people track them. But for most people dieting for shows, I do. As far as how many steps, usually I take a look at what somebody is doing on a daily basis. So, if someone comes back to me and they track their steps while living life as usual, and they're like, yeah, I'm getting like 7,000 steps a day, we probably just start prep at 7,000 steps a day. Like, just keep living life. Don't let prep or feeling tired or whatever slow you down. And, we probably start there, but, if we hit a couple rounds of plateaus, we may add more steps, just kind of, so it's almost like adding in lists, right? Because, if you're getting 7,000 a day, we bump to 8,000 a day with a plateau, then you're essentially just adding in some low intensity steady states. You're gonna have to get up and move around a little bit more throughout the day or go for a walk or something like that. And then we slowly build up over time as they need to. But I don't know if there's a hard number that I wouldn't, go above. I do think, it depends on what someone's doing, but I usually, if someone's up around like 12, 13,000 steps a day, I'm not pushing it higher than that. Some people may naturally be that high. So then the goal would just be during prep, like if your lifestyle and your job is making you do like 15,000 steps a day, then you need to keep it there. Don't let it fall to like 12 or 10 or something like that during prep. But I usually don't force steps up, way higher than someone's norm, because at some point you get diminished returns and it's going to start interfering with progress. Someone who starts prep and their average is 7,000 steps a day, I would never push them up to like 15,000 steps a day, because there's no point, like that's way higher than their norm. That's a ton of extra movement. But it could be someone who starts prep at 7,000 steps a day. Maybe over time we make a few bumps, and maybe by the end they're hitting 10,000 or 11,000 a day, because we've had to add some essentially lists in just to get them moving a little bit more. But I think, there's definitely not a one size fits all. And even with steps, I would start with what your norm is, keep doing it, and then, add the kind of the minimum amount additional needed, since you're essentially adding cardio, add the, minimum additional amount needed to keep seeing your target rate of loss. But I wouldn't go to extremes.
Okay, thank you. Great. So let's say let's say me, okay? So my step count average per day always will be between 15,000 and 20, because I'm also a personal trainer and
you're someone who's super active. So for someone like you, all we would do during prep, I would never bump that higher, because there is no reason, I don't see a benefit to going beyond that. Usually with someone with a really high step count like that also, I don't tend to add a whole lot of additional cardio if I can get away with it, because activity is already so high.
Yeah, but I have to mention that this will be, let's say, the upper range, like close to 20. When I do, let's say, 30 minutes of cardio a day, about like less cardio, but on incline treadmill.
Okay. So I would probably look at what your cardio is or what your steps are without that extra 30 minutes.
15, let's say 15.
15, yeah. So if living life and your job and everything is like 15,000 steps a day, I probably, like I said, I would probably try not to add a ton of cardio beyond that or a ton of extra steps because you're already so active just living your life and with your lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so I probably would just say, just keep getting what you're getting. Like, don't let that fall off during prep because that's going to slow stall rate of loss. Like, keep living your life. And I think there's benefit to that as well, right? Because a lot of people just stop living their life during prep, and stop doing stuff. And so I think there's some benefit to continuing to live your life during prep, probably from a stress reduction standpoint, like a balance with life standpoint. And so I really encourage people to keep living their life during prep rather than making prep their everything.
Great. So I do that like on purpose. I add the cardio because I like to, let's say, prep, or it's not prepping because I don't do this for contest, but I want to do this for photo shoot or something like this. So I'm doing the cardio on purpose because I like to diet on more food. That's
Yeah, and see, I usually try to get away. I try to get away from that. I like people dieting on more food, but if someone's already getting 15,000 steps a day, at some point it's going to be diminished returns when you add more and more and more on that. So I usually wouldn't push steps up a whole lot more beyond that. I would probably do most of it on the food side of things because activity is already higher than most people at that point. Rather than pushing to extremes, because that's where you can start seeing some of that interference with training and things like that.
So this is my next question will be like, do you think that, let's say, adding cardio but also adding more food will lead to the same results like doing less cardio and less food? You know what I mean? Like, or the cardio will always interfere with the training, although you are eating enough.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the situation. I mean, for someone doing 15,000 steps a day already, you're pretty active. I don't know how much more cardio I would add from that. You know what I mean? Before it would start interfering. Like, that's already a really high step count and higher than what most people are doing. And so I don't know where that amount is. Like I said, it probably depends on the person and their situation. But I think somebody who's sedentary and only getting 4,000 steps a day, getting them up to 7,000 or 8,000 steps a day so that they're moving at least a reasonable amount so that they can eat some food. That I'm completely on board with. And I usually do that with a lot of my clients who are crazy sedentary outside the gym. But with someone who's already super, super active, I don't know that I would push activity even higher. And if you did, I guess you'd have to pay attention to performance in the gym because, I mean, if performance and recovery were dropping off, that would be a pretty good indication that you're probably pushing it too far. But yeah, I mean, as you start getting up 15, 20,000 steps a day, most people start finding that that's where they start seeing like detriments to training when they're that active every single day.
Yeah, I understand. So I think it's more like specific for every person, like you said.
Yeah.
So my next question will be, what do you think the maximum amount of sets someone should do per workout? Not per week, per workout.
Yeah, that really depends on what they're doing, right? Because, if you're training big, heavy compound movements, I did a hack squat today, and I trained heavy and I took them pretty close to failure. I can only do a couple sets like that, right? Like you can only to really, really go there and really, really push a hack squat. You probably only can do a couple sets. But if you're doing leg extensions, man, you could train leg extensions to failure and do like 5 sets and have it be nowhere near as taxing as 2 hard sets of hack squat. And so I think it depends on what you're doing, right? And also how close you are to failure. I think it depends on the type of movement and how close to failure you are. If you're not going to failure and you're doing a bunch of isolation movements, you could train you could train for 2-3 hours probably. I mean, I don't know how productive it'd be, but you wouldn't get that beat up. You're not, nothing's that taxing. But if you're doing like heavy compounds or even a mix of compounds and isolation work, and you're training hard, I mean, there's going to be some limit. I don't know. I think it definitely can differ from person to person, and I think it's it's not, I don't think, as simple as, as counting a set as a set, because a set, like I said, a hard set of hack squat or a squat close to failure is going to be a lot more taxing and probably provide more stimulus than a set of like leg extension that's sub failure.
Yeah, great. So let's say training program like max OT.
Yeah.
When you do, let's say 6 to 9 sets per workout,
Yep.
but you do
Yep.
this once per week and you don't train the same muscle group again until the next week. Do you think this will equate to what is the evidence-based training like you mentioned in your book, or you know what
I think, yeah, I mean, I think,
and also you do 4 to 6 repetitions, I have to mention.
Yeah. And so I think there's a few things there. So I think any good program is going to balance all of those variables, right? So like max OT, if you use that as an example, 6 to 9 sets, that's not low volume, but it's not high volume. It's pretty moderate. Yeah. If I remember right, I think you're supposed to train pretty close to failure, and so the intensity's high,
yeah,
the volume's pretty moderate, and the load is pretty high with the 4 to 6 rep range, and you're using a lot of compound movements. So if you're doing, moderate volume, close to failure, a lot of heavy compounds, the frequency is going to have to be lower so that you recover. And so, I mean, if you look at any good program, you typically see that, right? That there's some sort of balance between, volume, intensity, and frequency. You look at like the original like GVT 10x10 workout, right? And like the original, like the way the original plan was written, German volume training, you're doing 10 sets of 10. A lot of those sets are going to be sub failure in order to be able to get 10 sets of 10. Yeah. It's a ton of volume, but the intensity is, by the end, it might be higher, but on your earlier sets, it's probably going to be lower. And then the frequency is, every like, I think 6 days or something like that, you hit a muscle group, or 5 or 6 days. So it's kind of a moderate frequency, but the intensity is lower, and you're not doing like maximal grinding reps to failure. And you can look at any number of examples, right, out there that, like dog crap training, another example, low, high intensity, moderate frequency, hitting things 3 times in 2 weeks, a lot of heavy compounds, high intensity, but volume's low then, because you can't have high volume, high frequency, high intensity all at the same time. And so there are any number of ways you can put together an effective program, but usually an effective program doesn't have you training muscle groups 3 times a week with high volume to failure. Like that's not going to work, or vice versa. If you're only training muscle groups once a week with low volume, then that intensity is going to be really, really high for that to be a good program.
So continue.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's got to be that balance. It can't just be all high or all low.
Yeah. Thank you. So this leads me to my next question that's related a lot to this topic. Let's say someone who do a max OT and train to failure and 4 to 6 repetitions, 6 to 9 sets, everything hard, but in the same week, in order to reach higher volume, like the evidence-based training, like recommendations, like let's say we know that 10 to 20 sets is the, let's say, the recommendations, right? So why not to do, let's say, max OT for the first half of the week and train the same muscle group with another session to failure, but with, let's say, higher rep range with lower weight in order to reach higher sets.
Yeah,
but my question, what will be better?
I mean, I think I think they both would work. There's some evidence that maybe doing a variety of rep ranges may be better than always training in the same rep range. But I think if you're going to start breaking workouts down to where you're training twice a week versus once a week, you're going to have to pull some volume back. Those two, you can't do, if you're doing 9 sets of chest a week, once a week, and you start training it twice a week, you can't do 9 sets of chest each day. Like you're going to have to pull some volume back. Like making that jump, right? So if your norm was 9 sets of chest once a week, then, you may start with like 5 or 6 sets of chest twice a week, or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's still more volume than you've been doing. But yeah, I think that that's one mistake a lot of people make too, is that, I would, if you're going from once to twice a week or twice to 3 times a week, if you're running like a specialization phase or something, well, sometimes with that, you just jump it up for the specialization phase. But no, I would just, pay attention to that. If you're always training once a week and you want to start training twice, it doesn't mean you do twice as much volume.
Yeah.
You break it
Yeah.
up between sessions.
But like I mean, like, let's say someone who train on, let's say you are training regular, not on max OT. You train like evidence-based training. You do, let's say, heavier day, okay, and you do 2 RIR, like reps in reserve, on all the sets, and you are on, let's say, last week on your mesocycle where you are at your MRV, let's say. Okay, so the maximum recoverable volume.
Yeah.
And the next day in the week, you will do the same amount of sets. Let's say here you did 9, and the next session you did 9.
Mm.
Does this will be better than doing like max OT training alone?
It's hard to say. It depends on if the person's recovering.
Okay.
So it depends on what those.
Okay, this is my question.
Yeah. So, what are you doing? So if you're doing 9 sets versus 18 sets a week, I think it depends on. I mean, yeah, most of the literature suggests 18 is better than 9, but my question would be, what are you doing? Because for those extra 9 sets, because if you're doing more really hard compound movement work close to failure for another 9 sets to double your volume, you're probably not going to recover.
Okay.
Your joints are going to get beat up. I think if it, and that's where, as you add in volume, I think you have to add some of these more isolation movements, or you have to move a little bit more from failure, because there are only so many really heavy compound movements close to failure that you're going to be able to recover from over the course of a week.
Okay, so this leads me right now, like, to the, let's say, the psychology of the trainer. So if someone likes the intensity and he preferred to train, let's say, heavy, like me, let's say, okay.
Yeah.
So now you just like help me with deciding what routine to do, because I'm always like, I'm doing this, I get results, but after a while, I just want to change because I want to, let's say, return to max OT. And then I'm training like higher volume because the evidence-based training is recommended. You know what I mean? But now you just like sharpened my decision, let's say.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, the psychology part plays a big role too, right? You have to enjoy what you're doing. If you don't enjoy what you're doing, you're probably not going to work as hard at it. You can grow through any number of different types of workouts. So if you find something you like and you're progressing with and you're recovering, because those are really the 3 biggest factors, is, are you seeing progress? Are you recovering from what you're doing? And usually those 2 are correlated, because if you're not recovering, you're probably not progressing. And are you enjoying it? And if the answer to all those are yes, I don't know that there's any one. I can show you all kinds of examples of people who are on one end of the spectrum, volume versus intensity, or the other, or anywhere in between, that see progress. I think the biggest thing is, you're working hard, you're consistent, you're doing something that's recoverable, for you and that you like, so that you stay consistent with it.
Yeah, great. So when I was training science-based programming, like programs, where I want to, let's say, understand everything, the reps in reserve and the rest between the sets and all of that, I just tend to train with lower intensity. Like, all my mind like was in the structuring the program, but when I want to apply it, let's say apply the program, I will apply it with lower intensity.
Yeah. I'll be honest, I don't use RIRP because it just is another thing that stresses me out to worry about in the gym. And I don't like it because I feel like I hold back too much. You know, because when I mean, I think of like, you know, my top set of like hack squat today, like I hit a really hard set of 11 reps that I don't know that I could have gotten a 12th. The 11th was really slow. And I think like as I'm going through the set, like had I been trying to target a certain RPE or RIR, I got to about rep 6 and it was getting really hard. You know, like I feel like I would have shorted my, you know, like it might just historically, I tend to short myself. I'm not great at, you know what I mean? Like I can push harder than what I think if I just take it to fatigue. But then, you know, what I do is I only did 2 heavy, hard working sets of hack squat because I was taking them fairly close to fatigue, you know, like, and so I didn't try to do 5 sets that hard, you know, and my total volume is more moderate right now in my training. And my frequency is I'm hitting things about twice every week and a half or so, about every 5th day or something like that right now. But I'm right there with you. I don't, like I said, I know a lot of people really like, again, that comes down to preference and psychology, right? I know a lot of people like the RP, RIR, and all of that, but you find that a lot of people, just looking at videos of clients over the years too, you find a lot of people are really bad at judging it, because I'll have people send me videos of things when they're trying to use it and they'll barely get the last rep and they'll be like, oh yeah, I had like 3 more. And I'd be like, that last one barely went up. I don't think you had 3 more. You know, and or the other way around. What's a lot more common is the last rep is the same bar speed as the first rep, and they're like, "Yep, I'm a rep sub failure," and it's like, no, your bar speed would be slowing down if you were a rep sub failure. And so, you know, I think some people are better at judging it than others. I personally am just not a huge fan of it, and I think it's just another variable that stresses me out, and I know I'm not alone in that. But again, if someone enjoys it, does well with it, I see no reason why they can't use it successfully, you know, and typically if you're going to be training more sub failure where you're 3, 4, 5 reps in the tank, something like that, you're going to have to train with more volume then.
Yeah. So do you think that, let's say I am now started to do like the max OT workouts, let's say, and I don't want to, let's say, do another session for the same muscle. Do you think that I will waste, let's say, a workout for building muscle, or like it will be enough to do the max OT?
I mean, you can make tons of progress training once a week. I mean, I think, you know, you look at all kinds of examples of people who've made a lot of progress over the years, and there's more overlap between muscle groups than you would think, even in a bro split, right? Like if you're deadlifting in a back day, there's overlap. If you're, you know, shoulders to chest work, arm work to your back day, you know what I mean? There's overlap.
But let's say we want the optimal results.
I mean,
So
I don't know the frequency.
Here is what I'm thinking about. Like, I think it will make it easier to answer. So what we are searching for in training program is the progress at the end or the volume. Like if we, let's say, preach the progress and we can progress with once per week and we are seeing like all the weights are going up. So what we want to do like more volume. This is what I don't understand. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I probably, if things are going well, I probably wouldn't be changing the amount of volume. And I think one thing a lot of people, I think, you know, if you look at the literature, like once a week versus twice a week with the same volume, it's not that much different. And even if you're doing twice a week with more volume, the difference isn't as much as what most people would think. You know, I mean, if you look at like some of the protein synthesis responses, like your largest benefit in terms of like additional protein synthesis, like spiking, is that first hard set. Like you see a spike just from one hard set. Now, is it 100% of what you could get? No. You know, and that's where adding some more volume beyond one set. But if you're looking for like biggest bang for your buck, you can still get like, I can't remember the number, but I think it's like 60-70% of maximum like muscle protein synthesis spike that you could get out of a workout just from one really hard set. you know, like, and so if you're pressed for time, you can still, you know what I mean, like progress off that. I probably would do more than that, you know, and for that muscle group throughout the course of the week. But, you know, I mean, I think, you know, people don't realize that additional frequency and additional volume, it's not that, you know what I mean, that much additional benefit extra. And if you're not recovering as a result, or like with frequency, one thing a lot of people overlook is connective tissue. You know, connective tissue protein synthesis takes longer to come back to baseline than muscle protein synthesis. It can take 3-4 days for connective tissue protein synthesis to come back to baseline, because it is slower turnover, slower to repair. And so, you know, muscle protein synthesis, everyone looks at, you know, the data and says, well, you're back to baseline in like a day or two if you're trained. So you just train every couple days, but your connective tissue might not be recovered at that point. And so I think there is more to it, you know, that you know, people need to keep in mind as well. It's not necessarily, it doesn't mean it's bad to train more frequently. I usually try to avoid frequencies more than twice a week, unless it's like a short specialization cycle. Like, I don't know that I would always train the same muscle group 3 times a week, unless we're trying to, you know, really focus on something. Like that's where you start kind of chipping into, I don't know if the connective tissue would be completely recovered. I think you'd have to be a lot smarter with what you're doing in the 3 sessions. I think, you know, twice a week, once a week, like, as long as someone's recovering and progressing, I'm not too concerned. I even, like I said, I like rotating splits where it's somewhere between the two, myself, you know, where maybe it's not as low frequency as once a week, but it's higher frequency, or it's lower frequency than doing it twice a week. You know, so maybe you train things 3 times in 2 weeks or something like that. I find, like, just joint wise, I do pretty well with that. Great,
thank you. So my next question, how much time you got? Because I don't want to...
Yeah, I got like another half hour or whatever. So whatever you have for questions.
Okay, great. Thank you. So my next question, it's about myself also. So I'm already on cutting phase. I have lost a lot of body fat and retained muscle. I see that from my performance at the gym and my appearance. My training was, okay, before let's say 2 weeks, or let's say I can say also this week was the same. Okay, so the last week, it was about 12 to 14 sets per week for each muscle group. I trained twice for each muscle. And I tend to see that my muscles that I have trained with low reps, let's say 4 to 8 reps, tend to look harder and bigger than the muscles that I trained with moderate to high reps. Does this say that I am fast twitch dominant? And I can tell you what muscles, if that helps.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, different people, you know, definitely respond to different rep ranges. You can grow from a variety of rep ranges. You know, I usually would throw, if someone's training twice a week, I would probably throw a mixture of that in there where, you know, maybe like we had talked about earlier, maybe one of the times you train in the 4 to 8 rep range, and then maybe the other time it is something like 10 to 15 or 12 to 20 or something like that. That's also a good way when we're talking like joint health to stay healthier too, because if you have one workout that's more the heavy compounds and you come back and hit that muscle group a second time, but it's more isolation type movements, higher reps, you know, you're probably going to stay healthier rather than just pounding heavy twice a week.
Yeah. So do you think this have a thing about the fiber type?
I mean, I don't know, because if you look at a muscle, no muscle is exclusively fast twitch or exclusively slow twitch. They're all a mixture. So I don't know. I think it'd be really hard to say for sure. I mean, I think, you know, just as a general rule of thumb, like I said, if you enjoy the heavy lower reps and you're recovering from them, and it sounds like you're making good progress with them, you know, I would keep going with it.
Okay, great. Thank you. So my next question will be, what do you think about the pump, and do you use it in your clients' training like other coaches use? Like let's say training like FST7, Hani Rambod.
Yeah, I mean, I'll throw like some higher rep stuff or some supersets in a client's program. You know, I just wrote a client a program yesterday where, you know, one of the days of the week was heavier, like 6 to 10 type rep range, kind of like we talked about, right? So one day was 6 to 10 type rep range, and the other day was a lot of supersets and a lot of like 15 to 20, 12 to 20, 12 to 15 type rep range. That's not exactly the same thing as like an FST7, but I mean, it's more pump work and blood volume.
Like you divided the FST7 for 2 sessions. Like,
Yeah,
because in FST they do like, I think, heavier work at the beginning of the workout, and then they will do 7 sets of pumping sets.
yeah. And so, you know, I think that's another way you can structure it. If somebody is doing, you know, if somebody's doing all of their, you know, or training them, you know, instead of doing heavy day, light day, they're doing a mixture of rep ranges throughout a workout. You could do something where maybe you do a more strength movement that's like 4 to 6 or 4 to 8 range. Maybe you do something in that 10 to 12 hypertrophy range, and then maybe you throw in some high rep stuff or some supersets at some higher reps on another movement or two, and you kind of get that variety of rep ranges in the same workout. That's another way you can set it up.
Great, thank you. So now my question is about nutrition, okay? This will be, I think, tricky question. So if we equate the calories and we eat enough protein, we know that there is no difference between high fat or high carbs. But if we do low fat, low carb, and eat 90% of our calories from protein only, why not everyone doing that if we know that our body know how to convert protein to glucose and to fat? So why the worries, let's say?
Yeah, I mean, that process is going to take a lot of energy, and it's not going to be as efficient. You're not going. I mean, you're going to be glycogen depleted probably in that state. And if you're only eating 5% of your calories from carbs and 5% of your calories from fat, you know, carbs, you're going to probably be deficient in a lot of vitamins and minerals, because that's where a lot of your fruits and vegetables are going to be primarily carb. Fat, you're going to 5% of calories from fat. I mean, that's going to be, well, first off, this ratio would be crazy hard to hit, but 5% of your calories from fat, that would probably lead to some hormone issues. Fat is needed for hormone production. And so, you know, I think that there's a limit to how much protein is, you know, like I'm a proponent of going over a gram per pound of protein, especially when someone's dieting, but, or even in the off season, if they have the extra calories to do it. But, you know, you have to have enough calories to have adequate carbs and fat. You know, if you are eating, if you're a 200-pound male and you're eating 2,000 calories a day and you want to eat 2 grams per pound protein, that's 400 grams of protein a day. That's 1,600 calories. It only leaves 400 calories for carbs and fat. So that's probably a really bad idea. Mm-hmm. But if you're that same male and you are eating, I don't know, 4,000 calories a day, and you know, I don't know that I would still be eating 400 grams of protein, but that would be 1,600 calories, right? So that would still leave 2,400 calories for carbs and fat. So you'd be able to eat carbs and fat. Again, that's an extreme example. I don't know that I would go to 2 grams per pound in most cases, but it kind of gives you the idea, you know, that if your calories are really, really low, yes, going above gram per pound may be beneficial at times, but you got to balance it out with having adequate calories for carbs and fat as well.
Great, thank you. So my next question will be, what do you think the most, let's say we decided that someone have to do cardio. What do you think the most amount of time someone should do in order not to start burning muscle?
Yeah.
And let's say we are talking about less cardio, not intensity.
So if I'm doing like low or moderate intensity cardio, I still try to keep it as low as I can, you know, and so I probably would combine it with, well, how much are we adding in addition? Where are their steps at? How much are their steps above their norm? And then how much cardio, like timed, like moderate intensity stuff or higher intensity stuff are we adding beyond that? And so I don't know that there's a one size fits all answer, but in general, I would keep it, as low as possible while still seeing their target rate of loss. And so I've worked with clients where that might be zero cardio and like 8,000 or 9,000 steps a day, and they get stage lean. I've worked with other clients where maybe they're getting 12,000 steps a day and they're doing like 5 45-minute sessions of cardio a week or something like that. At the worst of prep, not at the start, but like at the worst of prep, And so it really depends on the person, but I would get away with as little as possible.
Just a minute, I don't hear you. Yeah.
So I would get away with while still trying to, eat or try to lose at your target rate of loss. And so, I don't know that one's a one size fits all, but I mean, I would keep it low if possible, because even though nobody cares what you can lift when you get on stage, like trying to keep performance up in the gym and recover from your workouts during prep is a good idea. Because that usually is going to be correlated with muscle retention as well.
So I think that you set the ROL, the rate of loss, and it's like indicator for you for what to do, right? So if you, let's say, see someone who are, let's say, overdoing it, you will listen the cardio or the steps.
If they're losing too fast, you need to pull. Usually, pulling cardio back's the first thing I would do if they were doing some of it, and then add some food too. But I mean, even when someone gets stage lean, one of the first things I do is I start reversing them pretty aggressive, pulling cardio out, just because you can really burn through some muscle and look pretty flat and stringy if you're still doing a ton of cardio when you're stage lean, and you don't need to keep losing weight.
Do you think that there is a cap for calories? Like once I heard Dr. Mike Israel talking in one of his videos that, let's say, 1 hour of cardio, or like you have to limit yourself to 1 hour of cardio, or to limit your calories, like your weight by in pounds multiplied by 2. Like this number of calories will be the cap for burning in one cardio session. Let's say you are doing 2 cardio sessions, you can do each one in this number, you know what I mean? But not to overdoing it in one session.
No, I would probably agree. I mean, I if I'm understanding right, because I mean, I'm not a huge fan of just jacking up a bunch of cardio to keep food up. I would be, pulling food back as well as adding cardio.
Great. Yeah. So my next question will be, if let's say I'm recovering well and I am doing a lot of volume, let's say 20 sets per week, okay, and I am recovering and everything is okay with the nutrition and training and progressing, do you think that when it comes to cutting, I have to lower my volume or to continue at first like with the same volume and to see if I have an issue with the recovery?
Yeah, that's usually I would probably stay around the same volume as you've been training at. But I mean, at some point you might have to pull some back later on if you're finding you're not recovering as much. Yeah. But yeah, usually at least at first, I would probably keep whatever built the muscle is going to keep it there.
So you go by the recovery, right?
Yeah, as long as you're recovering, that's what I would use. If your strength is really dropping off in the gym and you're not feeling like you're fresh and ready to train when you get there, and it's not because of something like you need to deload or something like that, but like you just deloaded 2 weeks ago, you're not feeling fresh, your strength's not going up, it's going down. That might happen when you're extremely lean as a natural, but like if you're early to midpoint of prep and like strength's going down every single week, something's probably wrong.
Great. So my last question will be, someone who is my height. So my height is 169 centimeters. I think it's about 5'6". Yeah, 5'6". So from your experience, what should I weight if I want to contest prep? Like,
yeah, I don't think that that's a one size fits all. You know, I have had clients step on stage. The lightest amateur I've ever had win a show was 135 pounds on stage. I think he's about 5'4". The heaviest natural I've ever had on stage, he was about, I think, 208 at like 6'3". And so it really depends. It depends on how it looks. You know, I had a client when, you know, I've had clients all the way anywhere between the two, right? Anywhere between most people fall somewhere in between, right? 135 and 208 on stage. But, you know, who are natural. But
yeah, but do you think that, let's say, if I tell you, let's say, how many years I have been training, could this help with predicting?
It's going to be different from person to person, though. I wouldn't worry about the weight. I would worry about how it looked.
Looks, okay.
Because it isn't whoever weighs more on stage, it's whoever looks better.
Yeah.
You know, if someone is maybe lighter, depends on, you know, how does that muscle look? How lean are they? How is their posing? Are they symmetrical? You know, like you can have people that weigh less at the same height look bigger and better on stage because they're leaner or they can pose better, or maybe their structure is just better genetically. You know, or they're more symmetrical, you know, someone neglected their legs for years and they don't, you know, they're not as symmetrical or something like that. And so, yeah, I think, you know, I wouldn't say it's a one size fits all. I would base where stage lean is and how you look versus a number. And so I would use the scale still to, you know, look at your rate of loss and things like that. And
yeah,
you know,
I'm asking because of the, let's say, when I started my cutting phase, I was, I think, about 23 body fat percentage, or I think more 24 like this. And now after 2 months and a half, I think, about 3, I am 15.39, 39. Yeah, so I'm asking about the weight because I like to know, like, how much weight should I continue to lose in order to, let's say, reach 10 body fat? 10
yeah, and you know, I don't have clients track body fat percentage. I actually usually discourage clients from tracking body fat percentage because it can have so much error. You know, I totally get, like, you have lost, like, I have no doubt that the measurements you've taken shows you have lost fat, and I'm sure your picture well. But I'm not convinced that, you know, you're 15% because that test says you're 15%. So I feel like a lot of us know someone who walks around the gym before a show and they're talking about, oh, I'm like 3% body fat because some test told me. And you look at them and you're like, no, like you're not lean enough to compete, like, let alone be some just crazy low number. And so, you know, those tests can have error, especially at the extremes in body fat. A lot of those algorithms are made for people with body fats that normally happen. You know, someone who's super obese or someone who's extremely lean, like stage lean, are going to have more error usually on those measurements. So I don't put a lot of stock in that. I pay attention more so to what direction's the scale trending, how fast we losing, what's that look like visually, and what is strength doing in the gym.
I'm using it like to see relative, let's say. I know that the absolute numbers will be not correct.
Yeah, relative's fine. It just has to be long enough to know that you're not seeing error. So something like BIA, you know, can have like a 7 to 9% error in an individual measurement. So you need to make a significant amount of progress to know that that's not error in the measurement and that's actual body fat loss. And so a lot of people will take body fat way too frequently. And it'll be like, oh, it's down 3% this week. And it's like, no, that's just error because your measurement is not that accurate. And so I usually don't. And then people will freak out, oh, my body fat's up. And it's like, okay, hold on, you know, like, let's backtrack. So your body fat, this test said you're up, but your strength's not down in the gym. You're holding strength. Your weight's down. And visually, you look better. So your body fat can't be going up.
So do you think waist measurement will be good? Because let's say I was 94 on my waist and now I am 81.
I mean, that's another variable you can track. I mean, it's still going to take time, and that one can have some error too. You know, and like I said, even with something like weight, I'm looking at averages usually, and something like strength, I wouldn't worry about, oh, on my third set of dumbbell bench, I added 1 rep. It would be more across the board as strength holding. You know, like I would look more big picture, like is strength kind of holding across the board? You know, you might gain or lose a rep here or there, but you will be pretty stable as you're diving. You know, especially as you get further into your cut. You know, what's your weight doing on average, not just one day, and then visually what's happening as well.
Yeah. Great. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for your answers. It was very informative podcast. So I want you to tell the people where they can find you, find your work.
Yeah. So you can go to my website, fitbodyphysique.com. I'm on Instagram at fitbodyphysique. I'm on Facebook as myself. And you can email me at fitbodyphysique@gmail.com. And then also my book. I know you said you had read, you know, Bodybuilding Complete Contest Prep Handbook. You can pick that up on Amazon for like $20. It's not super expensive. So any of those will be good.
It's a great book, by the way.
I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah. So I have one more question about our next podcast. So do you have, let's say, some information about enhanced people?
Yeah, I wouldn't say as much.
Like if we want to do a podcast of comparing things like training, nutrition.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't be the greatest for that one. I would say like 95% or more of my clients are natural. So I have a lot more experience on the natural side of things.
Okay. So thanks a lot. I will talk to you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I will send you the link and all of that after editing. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Goodbye.